right. Hey there, folks. Welcome one, welcome all. Hope everybody's doing amazing today. Welcome to our latest Hot New Hip Hop live stream. My name is Gabriel Baraz Nevares. I'm a news writer here, and I'm joined by the wonderful Aaron, who is one of our features editors. Aaron, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty awesome. Very excited for this live stream today because it's going to be our first opportunity to do like a full first listen reaction sort of piece on the new Future album, The Real Me. And we have a lot of other stuff to talk about. We also have the recent controversy with Young Miami Spend That track, which has been causing a lot of debate and discussion and reflection online. We also wanted to point you folks, in case you haven't seen, to our best albums of the year so far list. We're going to talk about some of our favorite records of the year, some of the stuff of the list that we would have changed, some stuff we would have wanted to see included. And finally, we have a pretty big weekend to look forward to as Jay-Z is doing his 3 Yankee Stadium shows in New York City. One of them tributing Reasonable Doubt's anniversary, the other the Blueprint, and the other Extra Innings. What it's going to hold, we don't really know, and that's what we're going to talk about. So go ahead and drop yourselves in the chat, say hello. Feel free to come through with all of your takes, questions, and all of that. And yeah, without further ado, let's just get it started with The Real Me, this new Future album. Now, Aaron, you recently wrote a piece that you put up recently called Future is still our toxic king, something along those lines, or still trying to be our toxic king. I want to ask you, just in terms of your first listen reactions to The Real Me, is that still, something that you stand by on this album? And just kind of like, what did you think about the approach that he took here?
Yeah, I think what really kind of sparked it was like, and it's kind of something that I've felt for a minute, and I'm sure I've like mentioned it in passing before, but I just think like Future's just kind of committed to this toxic king act, and then like hearing him talk about like marriage and true love and what he feels all of these mean within his life, personally and professionally. I feel like he didn't really I feel like he doubled down mainly actually on like all the jokes that people have about him, all the memes. Like I think he's like basically living in the persona that the internet has now created of him. You know what I mean? And the album is like, I'll first listen. It kind of takes me a couple days to really sit with an album before I can form like a real solid opinion on it. But I think a lot of it is like what we've always expected from Future. I don't know how much of it as a body of work I will like revisit after next week or the week after in terms of a front to back listen. But it does have a couple joints where I'm like, oh, like I like what Future is doing here, and you and I we've talked about that joint he did with The Weeknd, I think last year on the Last Weekend album, and that's obviously something that I was a little bit keen on hearing more of, and I think there are kind of moments across the album where he does allow that to to exist within the broader track list,
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I think it definitely does have its moments that are a little bit more melodic and a little bit more out there for Future. I wanted to specifically shout out the track No Misery, because I think that it has like a really nice pillowy, very kind of like dark synth atmosphere to it that has some like really heavily affected vocals from Future that kind of reminds me of old tracks like Xanax Damage. I thought the second half was also like really strong in this aspect. Songs like Cast a Spell and also Feeling I Give, I thought were like 2 of Future's best songs on this whole album. But I can't help but feel kind of disappointed by the track list, and I want to preface this by saying that I really enjoyed Mixtape Pluto, which was for a lot of people another collection of kind of hit or miss track list with some bangers on it. Um, and this one kind of feels like more of the same, but the presentation of it is what makes it like particularly disappointing, because with an album title like The Real Me, with a lot of the recent discussion about like Iceman that we've had before, as far as a potential Drake Future reunion, as far as like his influence in the game, and the things that he said on social media, as far as like his little like tirades and speeches about feeling like a billionaire, wanting marriage, what real love is to him. I feel like off of a first listen, it didn't really come off sonically on the album. I felt like it was just kind of him going through his motions and not really taking his themes in new directions in particular. And I don't know, I just feel like in comparison to other projects, it was just a lot more all over the place. It seemed a lot more repetitive. And I don't know if it's just like him trying to create a contrast between like really bass heavy bangers and the more light and melodic stuff and the more like melancholy stuff. But there was just like a bit of a disconnect on the album that you don't usually get from a Future track list. Like, do you think that are there any records in the past of his that you would kind of like compare this to, or you know, things that you think specifically he could have done better?
I feel like in a way, it's like um, he's kind of in a position done so much musically that the influences
Mm-hmm.
he pulls from feels like he's already done and has already worked for a degree. Like I just, to be quite fair, I just maybe for like about 5 years now, I haven't really felt like a Future album is like really stuck with me in a way where I'm like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
like I haven't had that wow moment with Future in a while, and I feel like that's like with a lot of artists that came out of that era is like he hasn't been releasing music that I've been like, oh wow, this is like really cool. This is pushing the boundaries. This is something that I feel is going to like we're going to be talking about at the end of the year with like such confidence in what it did in the moment. Like I feel like this album is on par with everything else he's kind of done, but it just kind of feels like he's I don't want to say redundant. There's still really cool moments on here. He's still experimenting with flows and his vocals in very interesting ways, but it's just not. I don't know. It's just not cohesive. Like when you look at like albums like Future and Hendrix, right? Like when he did
Mm-hmm.
those two, it was like he was able to kind of compartmentalize both of his uh, his sounds into two distinct projects, and it worked really well with him. But since then, to me, it just feels like it's this constant like let's chase a hit, let's chase a hit, let's chase a hit, and not all of it works in the same way that it has in the previous decade.
Yeah, definitely. Shout out to Seiya. Seiya through Instagram says Mixtape Pluto was the best album to round up 2024. I wouldn't say the best album, but you know, still pretty good. And especially for like that, you know, especially after the hype of the Metro Boomin series, I feel like some more casual Future was, you know, good for fans to hear. But going back to what you were saying on just kind of like the flow experimentations and with his voice and things like that, I think that there were some pretty distinct approaches to those specific innovations on this album. And it shows kind of like one of my main issues with it off of first listen. Because, you know, we haven't really delved into like lyrics super hardcore yet. We've mostly been going off of just kind of like the songs that we've been hearing them and the vibes and everything. So there's definitely a lot to, you know, go into. But I think that on some moments, like a Feeling I Give or on Cast a Spell, I think he does go into that higher pitch, into that squeaky flow in a way that's a little bit more emotive, in a way that is also something that he hasn't done before, in a way that he hasn't approached it before. Whereas on a track like 2018, which is the one that's getting kind of like a lot of viral play right now, it is more kind of like chasing a hit, doing it in this like very, you know, not I don't want to say like club centric necessarily because I don't know who's going to play that in the club, but you know, more of like a fun atmosphere to it, I guess, and with a bit more like kick to it, and it
Mm-hmm.
just comes off as if he had done it a couple of years ago, I think it would have been more interesting because 645 AR has like a couple of years in the tank at this point, and it would have been like right after the King's Dead flow that he very much
Yeah.
is breaking from here. But it just kind of felt a little bit forced, and it does definitely like come off as fun and aloof and just kind of like him letting loose in the studio a little bit. But especially when there are some other like more compelling experimentations in that sense on the track list, it just like you mentioned, it kind of makes it feel like a little bit redundant. Shout out to Kosnan7717 who said, "You crazy bro, it's just that you can't relate." I guess we can't relate to Future in a lot of ways, but with that being said, I think that another big part of the discussion of this album has been the lack of features on it. Even though I swear that Travis Scott is on No Misery, like I swear it, there's no way. But apparently, there's no features on this, and that took a lot of people by surprise. And I think it took us by surprise,
Yeah.
considering what we've been discussing before about a potential Drake reunion or its two-part Drake reunion, I guess, and other features like you know Young Thug and other free bands artists and Lil Baby and the you know the typical the
Yeah.
usual suspects. But how did you feel about Future, you know, tackling this on his own for the most part?
I mean, I think this might sound like a crazy hot take. I feel like he's trying to like do this J. Cole platinum with no features thing. Probably not, but
Really?
like,
Mm.
eh, I'm gonna just throw it out there for the sake of the conversation. But I feel like it was just kind of like 22 songs of just. If this was like a 15 song project, a 12 song project of just Future and all the like really good shit and all the other stuff, all the stuff that's kind of could be trimmed out was like taken off, I probably would appreciate a project of 22 or like a Future project just
Mm.
straight like that. But I think like because if I'm not mistaken, self-titled was just Future, right?
Yeah, I can't recall any features
Yeah,
on
and
self-titled.
I thought that was a great project front to back. I think Future has the ability to tackle a project on his own without any assistance. But I think when you're aiming for 22 songs, and like as we've mentioned, gets a little bit redundant at a certain point. Like I can't help but feel like he's just trying to do this on his own. I don't know. Maybe it feeds into the title of like, the real me. Like,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That I
but
think
I'm like,
that might be part of it.
yeah, but I'm like, even at that, I'm like, 22 songs is just too much. Like, it's just too much to. Even though the song, like the album itself, is like I think like less than an hour, so it's not even that long of a project. But it's just one of those things where I'm like, I don't know. I could have appreciated just someone cutting in here and there, just to like a palate cleanser throughout the
Hmm.
listening experience.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not that I don't think Future can't do an album on his own. I just think like anything over like 16, 17 songs is, you know, I don't know. You need some assistance there.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with the quality control aspect of it. And I agree the Future can definitely do something on his own. Like I think when we talk about that, it's not that the rappers do a bad job by themselves. It's that we think about what could have been some opportunities to flesh out some themes a little bit more
Mm.
and to add to some of the stories and the topics and the experiences that he's speaking to on the album. And a lot of people have also been questioning kind of like the lyricism of the album as far as if there's something that makes him seem evolved or it seems like he really is showing like the real him in a way. And at least off first listen to me, I didn't really get a lot of those moments. The closest I think off of a couple of like our first 3 or 4 listens was probably the build song because
Mm.
it's kind of like Future trying to detail kind of like what his ideal partner would be. And interesting concept. I don't think he really explores it to the depth that he thinks he's exploring it at, or at least like with that specific like song concept in mind. I do like that it's one of the more like creative and unique instrumentals on the track list, but I don't know. Were there any things like lyrically about the album that stood out to you in comparison to Future's past work?
I don't think so. Like, there's nothing that I think is like I feel is like a incredible display of Future's pen compared to anything else. I think honestly, maybe like off of these first few listens, the main thing I really get from it is just like what we were mentioning before, just the exploration of like his vocal prowess and how he approaches the song, sometimes with the flow, sometimes with the pitch. But I think just on a lyrical standpoint, it's like what more is Future really giving us at this point?
Hmm.
Outside of like hit records, if we're looking at like really trying to find like substance within it, I don't know. I just feel like Future's just way too self-involved involved at this point that like every time I listen to an album, it's like I don't even know what else Future is thinking about except for himself. And I think
Hmm.
because of that, there's not really much else to grasp on beyond just like him doing usual Future shit.
Yeah, for sure. I disagree that he's only thinking about himself, even if it's for a few bars. I can't remember the song off top right now, but there is a song where he mentions like I love my family, but it's hard for me to tell them how I feel, something like
Mm.
that. And I think that is kind of like at the heart of Future's artistry in a lot of ways is him finding it difficult to express these things. And I think that that was something that I would have hoped to see in a bit more of like a fleshed out sense. But I think also part of it is that the album was promoted in this way, and so it gave people these expectations when really he's done little else other than give us the Future that we love for the most part. And I think that there's also the question to consider of just kind of like how Future moves on, like not just like at the age that he's at, but with the experience that he has, with the influence that he has.
Mm.
I think that for most future projects, like I feel like the critical reception is like pretty meager at first, but then people really go back to it with time and they pull like the things that they really
Mm.
enjoy out of it. And I'm sure that this is going to happen with this track list as well. I'm just wondering, you know, do you think that, because he does say like sometimes like I try to stay away from the toxic stuff, but I can't, I can't help it, something like that. Do you think it's something that he's gonna, is there like a next step for him, or are we just kind of like, expecting too much out of a catalog that's already been so established?
Maybe, but I don't know. I think just to the point you were saying about him talking about his family, I'm like, I would like to hear more of that. And across 22 songs, I think you have more opportunity to be exploring that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when I say like he's a little bit more self-involved, it's just because like, yeah, we're listening to a song, an album called "The Real Me," but it's like, bruh, all we're hearing is just like, these things that I feel like we've already talked about. Like,
Yeah, the things we've heard from him.
yeah,
His lyricism, his themes have always been like a big debating point for hip hop, and that's sadly nothing new. I feel like these days we actually have like a really important sort of like lyrical kind of like topic subject matter discussion in hip hop going on right now, and that
yeah,
is the new song "Spend That" by Young Miami, which came out recently. It's been a big hit. They gave her a standing ovation at the BET Awards a little bit after the song dropped, and it's really kind of taken the culture by storm. A lot of people are, this is like one of the biggest hits of the year, but there's also been a lot of controversy around its lyrical themes, around this idea of like scamming people, and in scamming in like a romantic context and things like that. And we've had a lot of different perspectives from a lot of different people within and outside of hip hop, whether that's India Ari, whether that's Uncle Luke, and they've had this big discussion about kind of like the values of the song and the values that its consumers are kind of like putting out there. I wanted to ask you at first, Aaron, because we had a discussion about this, kind of trying to trace back the timeline of everything and how it went down. What do you think is kind of like at the core of people having this debate over Spend That, and having this debate over this Young Miami track specifically?
I mean, I think this has always kind of been the stigma with city girls, and I think it's like mainly because they're women talking about this, and I think that in and of itself kind of makes it made both of them a target for whether their content is appropriate or not, and it's like hip hop is hip hop. It's a form of expression. You might not agree with how people are expressing themselves or the content they're speaking about, but it's there to start conversation. And I think maybe I'm being a little bit naive by saying this, but it's starting a dialogue of sorts. I think also just with the history of the City Girls, this shouldn't be like a surprising topic for either of them to be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
JT got bagged and was like in jail on fraud charges. I think, if I'm wrong, my apologies, JT. But that was widely known at the time, and I think by the time, I was thinking about this too. If you go back to like where hip hop was at between that like 2016 to 2017, 2018, 2019, like when City Girls were really coming out, that's when the scam rap was like really kind of making its way onto the internet as a subgenre. So like, I don't know. For me personally, I think there's obviously issues with telling people to go scam or go steal, but like, yeah, look at the economy. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that hit hard. But yeah, let us know in the chat what you guys think of this whole Spend That controversy. It's been a big hit. Do you guys enjoy the song? Do you not? Because also it's a conversation of like whether or not the song is good, which I feel like is a completely different conversation people are having.
But it's hard. Like the song is
Yeah,
hard. Like
yeah. No, it's a jam. It's an absolute jam. And I think that part of, I do want to, I do, before I forget, I do want to go back to that scam rap thing you were saying, because I think it is a really good point that a rapper like TJX6 comes out and does a lot of like songs about like scamming and whatever, and not that scamming is like the end all be all of like hip hop sin, but just like in this specific example, comes out like that, gets a lot of praise, gets a lot of attention, and it's treated as more of like something funny. It's treated more as something like goofy or something exaggerated or very cartoonish or something like that. And then when a woman does it, in pretty much like the exact same way, like all of a sudden they are expected to take it more seriously and to be more careful about what they put out there and
Yeah.
things like that. So I think that's also just kind of like an unfortunate double standard that has obviously always been there for hip hop from the very beginning. And there's also the double standard of and that's within hip hop. That's not even getting into the double standard that people have with hip hop compared to rock music or pop or soul or anything like that when it comes to lyricism. um, but I think that in that way it is really interesting to look at how this really, like, it got to a certain point where this was not about Young Miami and Spend That anymore. It's about the people that are listening to it and participating in the viral trend and getting arrested over the viral trend, and the people that are like wagging their fingers at like sexual freedom and debauchery and things like that. Like, the discourse becomes about the discourse at a point, which I feel like has kind of separated a lot of context, like, from the original song as well. And I wanted to ask, like, what do you think is the what do you think is the result when debates like these happen? When the controversy becomes more about what somebody said about a song than like the song itself, if that makes sense.
I think it just ultimately just deviates, from what the first complaints are. Because, like, I get why people like Uncle Luke and why people like Trick Daddy are like going to Young Miami's defense. You know what I mean? Not only just because that's like hometown, but it's like part of the lineage that they're also a part of.
Yeah,
You know?
Uncle Luke himself with Two Life Crew, like that's why we have the parental stickers.
Exactly. And it's like, like they were pushing boundaries like crazy back then. Young Miami and the stuff she's doing and the stuff that City Girls are doing, to be quite honest with you, is like, it's not like they're really like presenting new ideas. And that's not like a shot at either one of them in any capacity, but it's just one of those things where it's like, but her even making a song like this, I'm like, it's supposed to be a hit. You know what I mean? Like, it's just supposed to be a hit. So it's like, if we're really having that conversation about, whether this song is a bad influence or not, or whatever it may be, even just going back to the TJ X6 thing real quick, like, he was giving actual playbooks on how to do this, like step by step. Like, Young Miami's not doing anything remotely as like encouraging as what he was doing at the time. You know what I mean? So I think like we end up pinning these conversations on somebody like a Young Miami, and the discourse obviously does not even end up addressing what the core issue is, which is why people are doing these things in the first place. You know what I mean? And why it's appealing. It's like we end up just targeting one person, and then that one person has to defend themselves. The song ends up getting a pair of legs that like extends well beyond what anybody expected, and the core issue is still unaddressed.
Yeah, and that's part of, and I think that to be clear, like it's important to talk about those things, and I think that's part of what I think India already has kind of like been very, what's the word, like been very demonized in this whole thing, because what she's saying is like, hey, I don't like listen to what you want. I'm just gonna say that this is not the type of stuff that I think people should be listening to for XYZ reason, or that I have an issue with because of XYZ reason. And I think that people are trying to just kind of like take that agency away from others by having all these debates. And it's been like this, difficult position where it feels like you can't even like, comment on something like this anymore without taking like a super hard stance on all these other things. And it's like, man, like I just like the song. And it's important to separate those conversations too, because some people are going to try to just have one in order to avoid the other. And it just defeats the whole purpose. But shout out to Rico B213 on Instagram, who brings up a very interesting question, a very interesting statement. A man wrote "Spend That," which I think is very interesting to talk about. I'm not sure if that's actually true. I haven't checked the writing credits or stuff like that. I know that Young Miami has a lot of like ghostwriting stuff like that, but I think it's also very interesting that when we were talking about like the gender dynamic in this question, like it's also part of what patriarchy wants to sell in a way. Is just kind of like, okay, well, you are a female rapper from Florida, you are gonna do this, you're gonna do that, you're gonna present this image. And I think that people spend way too much time scrutinizing the product of the image instead of the creation of the image. And it's not to disparage, and they also take it the wrong way in terms of disparaging Young Miami specifically. when really it's more about just kind of like acknowledging the reality that that exists and just aiming for more literacy and discussion and education and in a sense parenting as well, because there's always like the influencing the youth angle with these conversations as well, and all these other things that are far more important to people's understanding of art than the actual, you know, like explicit or like, you know, on paper declarations of the art itself. Like people think that art influences culture, and it's never like that. Like it's never like people listen to hip hop and all of a sudden they become violent or whatever. Like that's never really like been the case. And I think that it's just kind of a big sort of like debate that this is all brought up again. And in a way, like again, we're all recognizing that this is old. We've been here before. We know these things, but to just see the specific dynamics play out has been very interesting. Rico B with a follow up: Young Miami getting blamed for a song that was wrote by a man named Lil Ronnie, but no one talking about that at all. I think that that's also like a, again, like we mentioned, like it's like a really important thing to always keep in mind. However, something more specific related to Young Miami. Actually, we have an update on the actual writing. It was a collaborative team of 5 songwriters: Young Miami, producer JY Did It, Akil King, Mari Simmons, and Ronnie Wright. And I think that that's also like something as far as to consider as far as, you know, where you're actually tracing the criticisms of things from and how much you're attributing to like just like a single artist instead of a team. But going to Young Miami specifically, I think another reason why she's getting so much flack and so much discussion over this song in particular is because of the context of the Diddy relationship and his misconduct scandal, and just kind of like people perceiving her in a different way and maybe treating her lyrics like this more seriously as a result. What do you think that's the kind of effect that bias or assumption or presumption creates?
I mean, this might also be a hot take, but I think this is a risk that Young Miami assumed when she decided to both release the song after the fact of being with Diddy and, if I'm not mistaken, allegedly writing some sort of letter or something. I don't know. I don't know if she wrote a letter of support, but I know that she's, you know, hasn't necessarily condemned the guy. Uh, so I think like, yeah, that stigma is gonna exist with her, and if she's, you know, delivering the music in a way that she's presenting it as a reflection of her own life, then, you know, I think she got to take that criticism with her. Like it's not something we could kind of ignore when we look at the grand, like the Diddy thing is like the Weinstein thing of hip hop right now, right? Like it's the huge scandal where people are coming out from all sorts of the place with accusations that are like terrifying. So it's like if you lived a if you've been by his side on a very public level, but have also been around him in private situations where some of these allegations may or may not have taken place, and then you release a song like this, which kind of feeds into this, you know, stereotype of a younger woman being with an older, wealthier man. And yeah, some of that criticism is going to be there, and I think until she, you know, obviously it's not up to me, but unless she like decides to address this head on or condemn him or, you know, do something where people could at least like be like, oh, maybe she's not this person who is like complicit in all the crazy stuff, then like, yeah, you kind of have to take that one to the chin, unfortunately, or fortunate. I don't know, but I'm just saying like on a from a very like pragmatic standpoint, it's like these narratives exist, and you know, so she did write a letter from what we're being told. So it's like even then, if she did write the letter, then yeah, take the criticism, because this criticism of the song is directly tied to the way you presented your life being on a very public stage.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that to give some grace in that aspect and push back a bit, I think that she's spoken in the past with Charlemagne about like, I'm not afraid of talking about that relationship on wax and kind of like going into it. And I think that she's probably hoping to kind of separate those things a little bit, or at least like make the music that she wants to make because it's the music that she's made for so long, and then maybe carve out a space to address like this other specific thing if she wants to address it in that way. So I think it's also just kind of part of people kind of conflating that with the spend that thing, because I think that this could have popped off, you know, to a smaller degree if the Diddy thing wasn't a big context, but it just really like adds a lot of fuel to the fire. And at the end of the day, it's still made for one of the biggest hip hop songs of the year so far. We're going to see if it keeps up that momentum as a potential song of the summer. We'll see where that goes. But speaking of best so far, yeah, speaking of best so far, we recently put out a list of our 25 best rap albums of the year so far. I'm going to just quickly go through the top 10 to give y'all that might not have checked it out an idea. Please make sure to go check it out. We all put some wonderful write-ups up for it. And there's a lot of great stuff you should check out there. So at number 10, and in ascending order, we have Xavier So Bass with Xavier. We have ASAP Rocky with Don't Be Dumb. Isaiah Rashad, It's Been Awful. Vince Staples' Crybaby. Baby Keem's Casino. Don Tolliver's Octane. Drake's Iceman. Earl, Mike, and Surf Gang with Pompeii Utility. J. Cole's A Fall Off. And number one, Sideshow's Tigray Funk. And yeah, to get into this discussion, let us know if we got that right. If there are any albums that you guys would like to see on that list, what were some of your favorites of this year? I wanted to ask you, Aaron, first about kind of like the more blockbuster releases that we had on the list, as far as like the big album releases and things like that. What's been kind of what was your personal favorite out of those? And who do you think is kind of like has led the mainstream so far this year?
I'm on public. I don't like admitting this, but whether you like the album or not, that was like, I think in terms of a blockbuster release, something that like the rollout matched the anticipation, which I think also matched the what it was in terms of everything that came out with the project. So I'm like, I liked a lot of these albums that came out this year, but I think Iceman. And I also, to be quite fair, I also doubted Drake a lot before this album came out. I was not really excited when the live stream happened, and then I watched the live stream and I was like, he did his thing. So I will I'll give Iceman that one, just because it was the big album of the year. And I think the general thing is like, even if you're not a Drake fan, there's something that you could appreciate. Like maybe you just take Drake's vocals out of the whole album. Production wise, very solid, top to bottom. I don't think there's a bad beat on that project. So I will give it to Drake in terms of that. Probably second will go to Keen, because I really like Casino.
Yeah, there are some bad beats on Iceman, in my opinion. Like, to me, the Ran to Atlanta, Both Halves Don't Work. And not to get into like a full like track list debate right now, but I think that the issue for me with Iceman is that, yes, it's the biggest hip hop album of the year, the biggest story, the biggest moment, the biggest everything. But to me, the enjoyment of it really depends so much on how much grace you're willing to give Drake on the narratives and on the beef stuff and on him dissing a bunch of like random people and going into the same subject matter track by track by track. And it's just like to me, it's a really interesting contrast, because in terms of a lot of the other mainstream albums that came out this year, this one definitely feels the most consequential, but it's one that is just so attached to its context that I really find myself like not able to, not able, I'm not that big of a hater, but I just don't really find myself going back to it or interested in going back to it as much, because I kind of know, I know the story. I feel like a lot of his technical prowess would be more enjoyable if it was in a bit more of like a narrative sense. But instead, I feel like it's, again, just kind of like repeating a lot of similar talking points, and just like how much it's been, I don't know. I think it just, and not even talking about Habibi and Maid of Honor, because that's like a whole other can of worms. But I don't know. I just feel like there's something about Iceman that, as dense as it is with the context and the consequence of it all, the grandeur of it all, I think it just ends up kind of like being a bit of a hollow listen when you go back, because I kind of got all I could get out of Janice and Whisper My Name and Shebang. And I think it's going to be interesting to see like, how the conversation evolves, because replay value is also like a really important part of best albums of the year, and just kind of like assessing your own assessment. I guess that's always a personal thing, but that's going to stick around where we're having these like large discussions about everything that's gone on. And I feel like even an album like Casino, like I feel like to me has more replay value because it's a bit more simply enjoyable, it's a bit more fun, and I think that it comes a lot more from personal stuff from Keem that we're not really getting on academic streams and complex discussions and Joe Budden podcast debates, as we all knew what Drake was going to do on Iceman.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that lack of surprise really kind of bogged it down as a release. I think I would probably give it to Keem as far as like a mainstream release. I enjoyed the Rocky, but I thought it was a bit too style over substance. I thought the Cole was good, but it was a bit too substance over style. And then Don Toliver just like came through with some hits, but like nothing that really like grabs me like that. Whereas with Keem, I feel like he really surprised me with a lot of his surprises and a lot of his, or not his surprises, but a lot of his themes with the vocal experimentation. With I didn't know he had a song like "Sex Appeal" in the bag, and that's been like one of my most played songs of the whole year so far. Like that song is addictive. Circus Freestyle, No Blame, No Security, like just some really great highlights on it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like as far as the mainstream releases this year, it's been a lot of like polarizing things, but also since all of the fan bases are against each other,
for sure.
there's no room for like mid. It's either the best thing or the worst thing ever, and that's kind of like tainted, I feel like, a lot of the discourse around the best
I
album.
will say though, no, I mean, I will say the Don Toliver album, I think grew on me a lot more over these past few weeks. I got to see his tour. And I was never like, to be honest with you, never like a huge Don Toliver fan, but just like hearing, I think sometimes when you listen to music and you like kind of listen to it in the right context, like around people, and like you see how other people react to certain things, you can kind of have a better appreciation for it. And I think the Don Toliver album is like, obviously I don't think it's like the best thing this year, but I do think it's like climbing its way up my rotation. For like the projects this year. But the other thing I have like with Don Toliver is like, we talk about like a Drake, a Keem, a Rocky, and like a Cole, and it's like none of them are like as melodically driven as somebody like Don Toliver. And I sometimes feel like, Don Toliver is he necessarily like a rap act in the same way when some stuff does lean a little bit more into like a more of an R&B space or even a pop space than it does like a rap space. So I think like, I don't know. I like the Don Toliver album, but I think like in terms of like, trying to hit like the lyricism and all these other pillars, I think it doesn't do it for me. But I do think it's a pretty good, pretty enjoyable album.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that aspect of Don, as far as like him being a rapper, I feel like is a conversation that's followed like people like, even as far back as like Lil Jon to like Uzi and Yachty and things like that. So, I think it's a common trend. Shout out to Seiya again. Mozzie's album with ESCG was dope as well. Love me some ESCG. Keep letting us know what are some of your, what's up?
Mozzie's just like consistent. He just doesn't like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I think what you're getting with Mozzie, and I think like whenever he's aligned with someone like ESTG, you get like a really good chemistry there.
Yeah, they're all about the work. They're all about the work. Keep letting us know in the chat what are some of your favorite albums of the year, some stuff that we missed from the list. I wanted to ask you, Aaron, regardless of where it comes from or whatever, like what has been your personal favorite album this year? Like what would you have put number one on the list if it was yours?
I mean, I think that's just, it keeps, the problem with like mid-year lists is that like you're still kind of going through the motions of like what's sticking with you as the seasons change. But the Isaiah Rashad album has definitely, I think just like it's really like won its place. I think Isaiah Rashad is such like a great talent that I don't think we like talk about in the same extent we probably should. But it was a really good album, and I feel like Isaiah Rashad, like his ability to kind of like get as personal as he does as a writer, mix like these East Coast, like these like technical East Coast tendencies or skill sets, and like really like weave it with like his Tennessee flavor. It's like, I don't know. It's like really, it's always nice to hear from him, and I think the recent album he dropped was like probably going to be something that sticks with me until the end of the year.
Yeah, for sure. It's Been Awful was definitely a tender experience, as we've come to
Mm.
expect from Isaiah. And I think in comparison to his more recent work, like House is Burning, I think it's a little bit more in that dour space, and it ends up coming off as a little bit more intimate than
Yeah.
like. I feel like before there was also a bit of like a smoke sesh quality to some of his albums, where I felt in a bit more of a group setting, and this one I feel like he really just kind of like stripped back in a really interesting way. My personal favorite so far has been the new By Storm album, My Ghost Go
Mm.
Ghost. Just like speaking of tenderness, like just some incredible writing from Richie. I think that it's an album that explores loneliness and absence, and just kind of like going through everyday motions in a really interesting way. I think the production is like really fragile. It's like I wrote that it was like glass in the write up. It's got some really like interesting, forward thinking experimental production. Great Billy Woods feature as well, and just like a really emotionally compelling album experience. Like it starts with Richie, telling his wife like, "Oh, like I'm scared of having a baby because I'm gonna lose you. Like you're not just gonna be mine anymore. We're gonna share this thing." And it's a very beautiful thing to share, but also it's a lot of responsibility. And there's this just like amazing push and pull on the record between those. And I've been a massive Injury Reserve fan for the longest. Rest in peace to Grogs. So that's been like it came out in January, still like has stuck with me all the way through. I'm also an Earl stan, so that's obvious. I do want to give a shout out to Sideshow because like really what an amazing body of work. We were talking about long track lists.
Mm.
That album is like 28 songs long, and it
But
goes by,
effective.
and it's so
Effective.
effective because it switches up styles so well, like so many contemporary rap styles and new innovations to talk about. So shout out to Sideshow. Shout out to 10K, man. 10K is killing it. And also, I gotta mention that the new Xavier So Bass album is like so addictive. I have not been able to stop listening to it. It's like my favorite like new gen release in the past. Like I don't think I've liked like a new gen album from like a newer rapper this much in a couple years. So like please go check that out if you haven't. I also wanted to ask, I mean, we were talking about the future album at the top of this live stream. Like, do you think there are any other albums in the next 6 months that are gonna end up topping that list, or do we have like a stronger first half than second? I
I'm
mean, I guess
sure.
I don't know all that's gonna come out, but yeah.
I'm sure there's gonna be something dope that comes out. I think you and I were talking about the Dahi album, and just
Yeah.
the features alone, that looks very very promising.
And the
Uh,
singles were really good too. I really like the Childish Gambino one.
yeah, so I'm like, and like Dahi's imprint on just like oh, for however long he's been in this game, it's just incredible. Like he's like actually really made some of my favorite produced on some of my favorite songs, especially like within the 2010s. And I think like this is gonna be. It's always cool when you see a producer kind of like take the lead as an artist, and
Hmm.
especially when they're like the network of artists that they work with are like a Vince Staples, a Childish Gambino, a Kendrick Lamar. Like there's like so many like dope names that he's around that I'm like I have a very strong feeling that this will be something that like somehow some way tries to challenge whatever is about to be at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. I also want to shout out the upcoming Open Mike Eagle and Kenny Siegel project, or
Mm.
Seagal project. I apologize. Doomed, which is going to come out on Backwoods Studios on August 24th, I believe, something like that. August 28th, maybe. They just dropped a new single for it today, which was, as always, Mike is just super, super thoughtful with his verses, and just like comes through with this very cheeky sense of humor that's also kind of like a bit understated, but just so thoughtful. I just think of the word thoughtful when I think of Open Mike Eagle, because he really shows that
Mm.
perspective. Kenny Scala, great production as well, and we'll see what else is in store for the year. I think some of our favorite parts as people who love hip hop are the albums that we weren't expecting, the new faces that we weren't expecting to fall in love with, and so I'm really looking forward to how that goes throughout the rest of the summer, the fall, and the winter. And one thing that people are wondering is Jay-Z going to drop an album in the next 6 months, because he's got his Yankee Stadium shows this weekend, and there have been a lot of album rumors regarding it. There are like always album rumors around Jay-Z, so I don't think people should take too much stock in those. um, I guess if he were to drop an album now, it would seem like a pretty good time, Do you think? Well, before we get into all that, you recently put out a piece about 5 artists that you would love to see Jay-Z bring on for the tour. I wanted to ask, like, what do you think is going to be the main difference? Because your guests are also like across the shows. What do you
Yeah.
think is going to be the main, kind of like difference between these shows and just kind of like the energy that album like Reasonable Doubt gives off versus the Blueprint versus the rest of Jay-Z's career? Like, how do you think that's gonna play out?
I mean, I think one thing that's kind of coming to mind is that he now has an opportunity for not now has an opportunity, but I think just because like he celebrated 2 different albums and then like the extra ending, there's like a lot of room for a really cool stage setup. So I would like to. I'm sure the design of the stage across these 3 nights are going to be incredible. But I think just the fact that he's like, if I'm not mistaken, running through each of these albums from top to bottom, um, like Reasonable Doubt tonight, Blueprint tomorrow, and then I don't know what's going to happen on Sunday. But I think that's going to be, I don't know. I think it's just going to be amazing. Just I think I'm always just a little bit like just always excited to hear from Jay-Z in whatever capacity, just because I'm like, dude's pushing 60 and is still the guy. Like he's, whatever way you feel about him, he's still Ho. He's still done so much, and he's still rapping. Like he's still rapping. Like he there's something in him that like cares to rap, and I think that in and of itself is amazing to see. So I think more than anything, like I don't know what to expect tonight. I don't know if he'll bring out any guests. I don't know what we're in store for, but I'm sure. I hope it just isn't like it isn't in the same vein of the Roots show where it's like the main takeaway is just him dissing people from like a 3-minute. Like I don't want the attention of like 2 very important albums to be taken away from like internet.
Yeah, I agree, but I think with Blueprint specifically, if he does run Blueprint, there's Takeover on there, and he disses a lot of people on Takeover, some of which he's squashed beef with, some of which have sadly passed away. Rest in peace to Prodigy. And some of which he might still be beefing with. So a lot of people, Charlemagne recently said like, he should do like an updated version with new disses. And I think in that specific conversation about the disses, that might make sense. I just hope that if he is going to do something, he either like keeps it just to Takeover, although I guess like you're still using the beat, so I feel like you still can't escape like that specific criticism or that specific observation. But I hope that it's either like maybe like a sort of like minute-long freestyle like he did it at Roots Picnic during the extra innings set, or something where he plays with Takeover. But I agree that I wouldn't want the sort of like the whole Jay-Z of it all, the whole Rock Nation of it all, the whole the Jig Is Up of it all to overshadow like the actual celebrations of the records. And the stage setup should be fire. I agree.
Yeah. I do think though, like just with the Takeover, like I do agree that he probably should update it. Although I wouldn't like personally, just as a fan, like not contributing to any beef or anything like that, or trying to disrespect anybody. I feel like he is also the type of artist that would just play the song and just be like, "Yo, like I already said it, like it just is what it is," type of thing. Maybe he has a conversation with people beforehand. Maybe I'm even being just like wishful and thinking that, because like Nas retired Ether. You're never gonna hear Nas play Ether live. So, like I just don't know how Jay-Z really like sidesteps this particular song when it's such like an important part of that album that he is celebrating. If he does update it, I think that might be the only way to kind of like work through it without disrespecting people or like rehashing beefs that he's already put to rest. But I do enjoy Takeover still as just like a general record. If he does, but I wouldn't be mad.
Yeah, I mean, same with Ether. Sometimes you go back to those diss tracks and you're like, yeah, it's fire. In a couple of years, we're gonna be saying that about the Kendrick and Drake stuff and a lot of Iceman probably.
No, for sure.
But yeah, that'll be definitely like very interesting to see. So we were talking about special guests earlier. Before that, shout out to Say again, who says via IG, Jay-Z is definitely dropping something. I hope it would be awesome if it's good.
Did he
Obviously.
drop something at the end of the weekend though? Is that like what? Like I guess if we think he's definitely dropping something, when is he?
Yeah, because I don't think it would. I don't think it would be like tonight to upstage either this show or the next show or the Sunday. If anything, it'll be at the end
Yeah,
of Sunday. He like says something or some cryptic social
yeah.
media post or billboard or whatever. But
Because there's still other shows that he's announced too,
yeah,
like L.A., London, Paris. So
yeah,
I feel
that'll be
like there's
interesting.
probably more shows that he's probably gonna announce outside of that as well.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if he does something like more formal with the concerts, other than just like booking these other separate shows. But we were talking about guests earlier, and your wonderful piece on surprise guests. You prefaced it by saying we're excluding Beyonce because that seemed a bit too obvious. That being said, she did recently drop the Morning Dew Donk song for the B Day 20th anniversary version. Her birthday is like all in, it's like a couple months away, but she drops it the same week as, or like really close to these concerts. So a lot of people are wondering, like, is she going to show up at the Sunday extra innings? Is there like some sort of other musical release thing that they're hinting towards? Like, is this just the Bayhive buzzing, or the Beehive buzzing, or might we actually see some cool stuff go down at Sunday's extra innings?
Honestly, I feel like Extra Innings is gonna be the night, if there is a night where like a bunch of special guests end up coming out. That might be the night. Whether beyond, I feel like part of it is like Jay-Z's just not trying to do the super obvious thing, and I feel like bringing Beyonce on stage is the very obvious thing to do. I would love to see her on stage. Of course, I would love to hear them go through some of their records, both their older ones and some of their more recent records. Like honestly, I love Ape Shit. I still think Ape Shit's a
Wow, I
fire
haven't
song.
heard I haven't heard that song like since it dropped. I feel like so I gotta
know,
tap
and
in.
I'm like, every once in a while I listen to it because it's a real good reminder of like of the Migos at the height of their
True, true.
Um, but like, I would love to see her on stage, but I'm like, would she come out? Does the song even like on Sunday's extra innings? Like, does that if he is announcing a new album, right? What if they end up being like, oh, we're dropping a joint project together? Like, what if this is the third act for her and like Jay-Z's, let me get back into my album dropping bag. I don't know if it'll happen. Honestly, I feel like it probably wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't see them doing like a joint announcement. I feel like this is kind of like,
Yeah.
not to say like, oh, this is only Jay's moment. Like Queen Bee can't be anywhere near this. Like, no, absolutely she can. But I feel like it would be a little bit. I feel like it would undercut both of them if this was like actually like an Act 3 sort of thing. Plus, like, this is just one part of the extra innings, like discussion of it, because you mentioned special guests, which we'll get to. There could also be like a B-sides collection of like very like old unearthed classic Jay-Z songs and ones that never got like their full like official release and stuff like that. He's done B-sides shows before, so that could be pretty cool. And I don't know, could you what are the names that you mentioned in that list? Because I feel like you mentioned a couple that would fit, like, one at Reasonable Doubt, one at Blueprint, one at extra innings. So what's that breakdown look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's Jazzo, who I think it will be interesting just to see him come out tonight. Mary J. Blige, obviously someone I'd like to see tonight. Eminem, I would love to see him come out and do Renegade with Jay tomorrow. Awesome. And then the other two were Eminem and Nas, or not Eminem, Kendrick and Nas. And I think if Kendrick were to come out, he would be a great Sunday night closer, and I think that would be like a really a nice moment just to see like someone like Jay-Z and then someone like Kendrick Lamar, just on stage together. And if it is a B-sides, maybe we get Don't Kill My Vibe, the remix.
Yeah, that'd be true.
Right.
And also, I feel like bringing Kendrick out on stage, it means that, if you do want to diss people, you kind of don't have to, because that's already kind of like that's gonna send all the shots it needs to send, at the people that
I think the visual of that alone will I don't know, probably have academics on stream overnight.
Yeah, it'll ruffle some feathers for sure. The Nas one would be awesome. I feel like they've already done like these public link ups in the past, and it also makes the whole takeover conversation very interesting because now it's going to be like an explicit context where like we're in the context of the blueprint. We're not in the context of, you know, what was the name of their tour was like I Declare War, something like that. Like we're not
Yeah,
just in a
yeah.
general like artist space, like this is my career. Like, no, this is the album that I dissed you on and that you like
I mean,
responded.
it's interesting because I think for me, it's like when you look at both of those albums, Nas is still connected to both of these milestones and like
Yeah, that's
indirect
true.
ways related to it because the beef all starts with Dead Presidents 2, and then like Takeover obviously is like a Nas diss track. And like when they did do the I Declare War show, Nas came out to Presidents and then go into The World Is Yours. Whether they do that together or if that even happens, like obviously we'll see if that pans out. But it would be cool to see Nas and Jay on stage, and I think like especially this taking place in New York at Yankee Stadium of all places. You know, I think there's nowhere more appropriate for the two of them to share a moment together on stage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think again, it would also I think fit a lot with just kind of like the way that Nas has been carrying himself in his career, like in recent years. And I don't know, I think it could be a moment because I don't think we've gotten like a true like Nas J moment, you know, for this like newer generation of fans. So maybe this could be like the 2020s update to that dynamic. Jazzo and Sauce Money would be awesome to see as well, especially like when I started getting into hip hop, it was when people were more critical of Jay-Z not like recognizing Jazzo as much, and I feel like that's changed a lot in the past few years. Mary J. Blige, Can't Knock the Hustle,
Yeah,
legendary, and Eminem doing Renegade would be really, really, really
yeah,
fun. It would be really fun. As somebody that is not like the biggest Eminem fan, that is really like such an iconic like verse trade
yeah.
in the genre that it would be awesome to see. And I don't know, I think beyond that, in like the general sense of the Yankee Stadium shows, I think that it could also be an opportunity if you really want to speak on his origin and his come up and his rise as told by Reasonable Doubt in the Blueprint. I think it would also be part of this wider conversation about like Jay-Z and maturity in hip hop, and just kind of like how he might be like showing you know, how to grow within the genre, how to grow within the game, and things like that. So I don't know if you have any like specific thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay-Z's just been doing that. Like, I think I think for the younger generation, it like I feel like there's still a disconnect between Jay-Z and the younger generation. Like, I think that's like a pretty broad. I think there are kids that like were born either on the day or after Blueprint came out. So it's like I think there's generally just going to be a disconnect there. But I think like listen, as I said, it's just kind of amazing to see somebody like Jay-Z at his age play Yankee Stadium and still be the guy and rap in such a way that like this won't even be live streamed, but we're all still talking about this, and we're probably going to be talking about it all of next week as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully it'll be dope, you know. To wrap this up, just one last comment from music affiliated. Nas, Eminem, maybe J. Cole for sure, which could be
I
interesting
think
because
J.
that
Cole's on
might.
tour though. J. Cole
Oh yeah,
started.
that's true. Yeah, he's
So I
starting
don't know.
tonight. Yeah,
So I don't
he's
know
literally starting
how.
tonight in Charlotte. He's starting tonight in Charlotte, so maybe for extra innings, but
Yeah,
I don't know. So,
I
well,
would
well,
like that. I
we'll
think that
see.
would be great.
Yeah, it could put the stuff between them to bed as well that he
Yeah,
recently
for
talked
sure.
about with Fraser Tharp and all that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see how these Yankee Stadium shows shape up. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for tuning into this recent Hot New Hip Hop live stream. Make sure to check out all of our latest features on these topics, about Future, about Young Miami, about the concerts, and our best albums of the year so far list. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. We'll be doing more of these in the future, which we're very excited about. As always, Aaron, thank you so much for chopping it up with me, man. Really, really appreciate it.
My boy, I love doing these with you. I appreciate you.
Yes,
It's
sir.
been a great time, and thank you to everybody tuning in with us today.
All right, awesome. Well, thanks so much, guys. Have a good one. Take care, y'all.
Take care.